A majority of the House of Commons voted against a non-binding motion yesterday that called on the federal government to protect private property rights from First Nations land claims. A political issue that, of course, came out of very local issue, the Cowichan tribes ruling. Here to talk more about it, Conservative MP for Cowichan-Malahat-Langford, Jeff Kibble, is on the line. Sir, hello, how are you?
Good morning, Ryan. Very well. How are you?
Great to get you here. So why don't, if you don't mind, walk us through kind of what this motion was all about yesterday. I know it got defeated in the end yesterday, but talk about what it was trying to do.
Well, let's just go back a little bit farther. Recently, the BC Supreme Court made a decision in the Cowichan case, and this was over a property of 700-odd acres in Vancouver. And unfortunately, the case did more than just determine that part of the land. It established in the BC Court of Appeals that Aboriginal title is superior. That's the word from the decision, and is now a legal precedent across Canada. Aboriginal title is superior to fee simple title. Fee simple title, of course, being your private property land, and that ruling affects municipal lands and businesses and industry and of course, your home. So we put a motion forward, an opposition motion, to protect private property. And this isn't against First Nations, and this isn't against Aboriginal title, but it's against the argument that Aboriginal title is superior to fee simple title. And our motion was to put private property first in the Cowichan case, because some of that land is private property, and there's a whole a follow-on court case going on that. Also, that no agreement be made without explicit property protection. And if you remember, the Musqueam secretly done agreement between the government and the Musqueam gave Aboriginal title to most of Greater Vancouver. And so you can see the conflict now when that precedence is established in court. And our third point, publish a plan within 30 days for the Prime Minister to publish this plan to take his steps of what they're going to do to protect private property. And lastly, we're calling on the government to convene a parliamentary committee across parties to study all legal, constitutional, and political steps to protect private property rights in Canada. Look, private property is the fundamentals of our economy and our country, and we can't operate without this system that our country is built on. So we were very disappointed. I was very disappointed, and we put a lot of work into this, that we need a solution that will support unity, economic stability, and reconciliation. And right now, we're seeing exactly the opposite happening. So, as I said, disappointed that motion collapsed or failed.
Now, the Cowichan tribes themselves, the BC government, have said that neither side there want to, trump private property rights. And we've got a bunch of court cases, appeals that are being done on this issue. I think both the federal government and provincial governments have appealed the issue. So is it possible that this will sort itself out without the kind of motion that you were trying to bring yesterday?
Well, we need leadership from the Prime Minister to help sort this out. And as far as the Cowichan saying that they are not interested in private property, I respect that statement. However, the precedent has now been set in the BC Appeals Court that Aboriginal title is superior to your private property title. So regardless of what Cowichan or any other organization or First Nation wants, that's the simple, as I said, we're not directed at Cowichan, we're directed at this court decision that establishes a precedent going forward in the future that could impact the very fiber of Canada. And, it's, a lot of people say, don't worry about it. Nothing's going to happen. We're not here to stick our heads in the sand. We're here to get to the bottom of this. And legal experts that work in, even for the government, are saying that this is a terrible decision and we need a plan in place that will protect reconciliation, which we see this is a major step backwards, and come up with a solution for Canada. And right now, frankly, the federal government the Liberals are not doing anything about it. I had a question period today, and I said this was a failure of leadership of the Prime Minister, because they're saying and doing nothing other than saying, Canada, stick your head in the sand. They should be calling and bringing unity, economic certainty, and supporting reconciliation. They're failing on all three fronts.
But the federal government has appealed the decision, right? So it is in the courts. Is that? I mean, maybe that's not good enough, but is that at least what we're we're kind of waiting on here?
Yeah, a great question. I'm sitting in my office in Ottawa right now looking out the window at the Supreme Court of Canada, which is where this decision is being appealed at. Unfortunately, the federal government, under Directive Number 14, directed, and this has been a long-standing directive, directed federal government lawyers, and this was in the lower courts in British Columbia, to not use the argument for extinguishment. It's a legal argument that would basically allow extinguishment of Aboriginal title by fee simple title that's already in place. And the Liberal government directive, and it's been around for a while, effectively handcuffed federal government lawyers, which is why this crazy decision has come out. And they will not be able to use that argument. Federal government lawyers will not be able to use that argument now because they didn't use it in a lower court. They will not be able to use it when they go to a Supreme Court. There's potentially some workarounds in that, but this is going to the Supreme Court, and it's going with the business. Is also just yesterday, and I haven't heard the results yet, but a company, Montrose, from Richmond, that owns property there and is unable to get mortgages on their property, is also part of this, a separate appeal of this decision in the Supreme Court. So there's other avenues to tackle this, but it needs to get resolved. And most importantly, we need the Prime Minister to finally show any sort of leadership in this, which they failed to do. And he's supposed to be serving Canadians, and all we're getting is division, economic uncertainty, and damage to reconciliation.
Member of Parliament Jeff Kibble, he represents Cowichan-Malahat-Langford with the Conservatives. Always great to talk to you, and thank you for weighing in on this issue after the vote yesterday. Much appreciated.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. Thank you very much. I would love an opportunity to talk about Bill C-11 in the near future. It was also voted down by the Liberals, some amazing amendments that we collaboratively put into to make dealing with military sexual trauma stronger and better. They voted that down. I'd love an opportunity to speak about that in the near future. Thanks, Ryan, for the call.